Hey, Luke here with the Outdoor Boys YouTube channel, and I'm restoring this axe. This thing is a monster. It weighs a little over 8 pounds. It's hand forged, and it's gonna be awesome.
Well guys, I really think you're going to like this project. This is an 8-pound hewing axe. It's from a time and an era when men hand-hewed their logs into lumber. And it's unusual to find something this old with so few problems.
Got very little damage on this. This thing is in great shape. There's a pitting mark right there. I'm not sure what that's from. Looks like that might have been a manufacturing defect when they forged it. It's got this cut and they've got some dings along here. Not sure what caused that, but that looks like some metal on metal. Then right here we've got mushrooming on the edge. There's some writing right here, a little maker's mark of some sort, but I cannot make it out. I cannot read it. A little bit of mushrooming along the edge, but that actually looks pretty nice. The other side looks great. Very minor scuffs. A little bit of flaking right there. You can tell this is hand forged because the hole is not symmetrical. It's flat on one side and concave on the other. That's how you forge a blade like this. They kind of make it two-dimensional, and then they fold it over 90 degrees here, then 90 degrees there, and then forge weld it along this edge. And that's how they created it. The seam where they forge weld, there's no cracks or anything, so that's a good sign. All right, well, it's time to get started. I'm gonna first hit this with a 40 grit flapper disc and really try to shape it and get rid of all the pits and grooves. Well, 3.5 hours of grinding later, I am absolutely covered in metal shavings. But look at this. I got one side roughed out, only burned up 6 40 grit flapper discs. This is gonna look really awesome. Well, I've got a big pile of burned up flapper discs, but I've got myself one shiny broadhead axe. Now all I got to do is just hit it with the finer grits and start polishing. Well guys, it's been a few months since I worked on this project. In the middle of filming, my family and I went to Alaska, and then when we came back, I made an African spear, did some fishing videos, and before you know it, it's December. And you can see here that I picked up some rust spots on the axe here because I was just roughly grinding it. You know, I was using a pretty coarse flapper wheel, and that exposes it to rust. The finer you polish it, the more rust resistant it is. And with non-stainless steel like this, you got to have it polished and you got to keep it oiled or it picks up rust spots. So I've got to go and knock the rust spots off this and pick up where I left off. Well, that rust came off really easy, so I'm just going to go ahead and switch out from a 40 grit flapper wheel, and I'm going to put on the 120 grit flapper wheel, and we're going to go from there. So there we go. I've hit it with the 120, and really all you're doing with the 120 grit is you're just trying to take out the marks from the 40 grit. You shouldn't be really working on getting out imperfections with the 120. Now we got to try to polish it up. Now what you're doing is, if you can look in here, it looks pretty shiny, but you can see all these lines, those little swirly marks from the angle grinder. So what we're trying to do is get those out. That's all we're really doing. We're not getting rid of these imperfections that the 40 grit didn't get out. We're just trying to get the tooling marks from the angle grinder removed. I've got this little buffing wheel here and these different grits of buffing chalk. I can't remember which one's which. I think the white one's the coarsest. All right, there we go. Looking pretty shiny. It's not a perfect mirror finish, but it's looking pretty nice. There's definitely some imperfection in it, but you know what? Lets you know that it's old. So I've got this piece of African mahogany that's left over from my African spear project, and it's just the right thickness, and gosh darn it, it's a beautiful piece of wood. So I'm gonna make the handle out of this. Now I'm really thinking about redoing my African spear project, so I'm going to cut a strip like this right off. That's going to be the shaft for my second spear. Then this is going to be the handle. Well, there we go, a beautiful piece of African mahogany that's just waiting to become an axe handle. So I'm going to shape the head, fit it to the blade first, then we're going to do the handle, okay? There we go. Doesn't that look nice? Real nice smooth fit. A little bit of contact right here, which gives it a little extra strength. So if you hit down low, it doesn't put as much torque on the thin part. Now I just need to go and make this part pretty and then shape the handle. So I've got this replacement handle right here, and look at that. It's almost exact. Let's check this out. Oh. Well, this feels like a pretty good stopping point. I'm losing my sunlight, I am tired, and I have got a lot of things to do. Alright, so what I need to do next is round out the handle, make it a little bit more ergonomic, clean up the connection between the blade and the wood, sand it, polish it, and then mount it. We got the handle shaped the way I like it. It's a good looking handle. Now I need to sand it. First with the 80 grit to take away these edges, and then I've got to start polishing it. So I'll go 80 grit, 120 grit, 400 grit, 800 grit, 1000 grit, 1500 or 2000 grit. Might even have some 6000 grit in here somewhere. And by the time I'm done, this thing is going to be beautiful. Now typically I'd be using linseed oil, but I don't have any, so I'm using mineral oils, which is basically WD-40. Look at that, isn't that gorgeous? It's nothing but sanding, a little bit of oil. And it is absolutely beautiful. Nathan, you like that? Is that cool? Now it's time for me to cut a slit right down the middle, right down here. And this is the part that makes me more nervous than any other step, because if I'm off just a little to one side or it's crooked, it'll make it weak, and it'll make a really good chance that this breaks off. Now, I want it to be dead center, so I'm going to go put this in the bench vise, but it's dark out, and I'm not sure how good the video is going to look. So let's see what happens. There we go. All right, let's see how it fits. Oh, like a glove. Okay, looking good. All right, all I gotta do is make a wedge from this scrap piece of African mahogany, and then we can mount the axe. There you go, I got the wedge done. It is super thin because there's not a lot of play in this part of the axe handle. So I can't expand it very much, and I want to get that wedge down in there deep, so it's got to be a very thin wedge. This might actually be too thick. Yep, that's it. We let that wedge sit in there, let the glue dry, and then we're going to trim it up. Oh ho! Looks good. It's all dry. There we go. There is the finished product. Look at that. That is gorgeous. So I'm sure a lot of you guys noticed that unlike my other videos, I didn't sharpen this axe at all. The reason for that is it's already really sharp. This is an 8-pound axe. I mean, this thing is more like a splitting maul and less like a barber's razor. So putting a really fine edge on it is kind of pointless because it'll just get destroyed from the force of wielding such a big heavy piece of metal. So I think this is pretty darn sharp considering what it's used for already. Also, I get a lot of people asking why I don't temper these blades that I restore. Why don't I put them in the forge and retemper them? There shouldn't be any need for that. I have no reason to suspect that the temper's been monkeyed with. Plus, I really don't know what kind of steel this is. And if you don't know what kind of steel you're dealing with, tempering can be really dodgy because each type of steel needs to be tempered a specific way. If you don't know what you're doing, just leave it alone. Now, I'm not an expert on these things, but I believe this type of axe is called a hewing axe. It's flat on one side and round on the other. And the purpose of that is so that you can make round logs into square logs. So when carpenters were taking trees and turning them into lumber for building houses, they wanted to make them square, right? And so the flat side is the side that you want to make flat. It allows you to get a straighter edge with this blade. I'm going to try to do this without putting the blade into my right leg. I cannot make any promises that that won't happen. Now, I've seen guys do this before, and they did it while standing on the log, which seemed really impressive to me. So what I believe that guys would do is they'd stand on the logs and they would hew the right side until it's all flat. Then they would rotate the log 90 degrees and do it again, and do it again, do it again. Always hewing on the right side of the log. Well, there you go, roughly hewed out this one side of the log. Not that easy. It takes a bit of skill, and props to anybody who can do this really well, especially without cutting your feet off. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more great videos from the Outdoor Boys YouTube channel,
Don't forget to